My name is Rose Bennett, and at 68, I thought my life had settled into quiet routines. After losing my husband Richard, the days passed in predictable patterns, volunteering at the library, tending to the house that suddenly felt too big, and drinking morning coffee alone at the kitchen table. My son, Michael, was my only child, a brilliant entrepreneur whose tech company consumed his life. Our weekly dinners had dwindled into rushed holiday visits, and though I tried to hide my disappointment, the distance left a hollow space in me. That was why, when he called one evening, with a spark of excitement in his voice, I felt hope for the first time in years. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special. Are you free this weekend?" I spent far too long choosing an outfit for that dinner, not too formal, not too casual, wanting to make a good impression. When Michael walked into the restaurant holding hands with a tall, elegant blonde, I understood immediately what had lifted his spirits. Her name was Chloe, and she was the sort of beautiful that made other women glance at their reflections. She had perfect hair, a warm smile, and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Bennett, I've heard so much about you," she said, her tone sincere. All through dinner, she hung on my every word, asked thoughtful questions about Richard, and even complimented my earrings with genuine enthusiasm. I couldn't help but be charmed. Then came the moment that sealed my decision. After I confessed how quiet the house felt without Richard, she squeezed my hand and said softly, "Rose, you shouldn't be alone so much. Michael, didn't you mention that Caribbean cruise? Rose should come with us." My son looked surprised, but she insisted, calling me her future mother-in-law, words that hit me like sunlight through clouds. I said yes before Michael could object. For the first time since Richard's death, I felt wanted again. Over the following weeks, Chloe and I became almost inseparable. We shopped together, lingered over long lunches, and shared laughter that made me feel young again. She asked my advice on dresses, listened to old stories about Richard's bad jokes, and encouraged me to indulge in desserts. It felt like I'd been given the daughter I never had, but little signs should have warned me. When she visited my house, she wandered through every room with reverence, running her fingers along the marble counters and pausing at the chandelier Richard had given me for our anniversary. "This is a dream home," she whispered, settling into his old leather chair as if testing her future. Later, while shopping, I made the mistake of leaving my purse with her for a few minutes. At the time, nothing seemed out of place, but looking back, I realized that may have been when it started. The first troubling episode came a week before the cruise. I woke up disoriented in the guest bathroom, convinced I was in a hotel, unable to recognize my own reflection. The panic was overwhelming, but I brushed it off as stress. Later, I forgot the name of my neighbor of 30 years while speaking to her in the grocery store. I told myself it was aging, maybe early dementia, though inside I was terrified. When I mentioned these lapses to Michael, he dismissed them as stress and suggested the vacation would do me good. Chloe's voice floated in the background, warm and reassuring. "Don't worry, Rose. My uncle went through something similar. A little rest and sea air will help." Something about the casual way she said it unsettled me, but I ignored the feeling. The cruise ship dazzled me when we boarded in Miami. Gleaming marble floors, fresh flowers, glass elevators. It felt like a floating palace. Chloe seemed thrilled with everything, bouncing on her toes like a child. Our cabins were side by side, and she promised, "We'll be like neighbors." That first night at dinner, I tried to enjoy myself, but tension lingered. Michael looked distracted, checking his phone, while Chloe was almost too cheerful, guiding the conversation. Later, through the thin cabin walls, I overheard them arguing in urgent whispers. "This wasn't part of the plan," Michael said, his voice tight. "Plans change," she snapped back. My heart pounded as I pressed my ear to the wall, but their words soon fell into whispers I couldn't decipher. By the third day, my confusion episodes grew worse. Once, I woke at 3 a.m., standing barefoot on the ship's deck in my nightgown, unable to remember my name. A guard escorted me back to my room, pity written across his face. At breakfast, Chloe was overly attentive, bringing me orange juice and reminding me about my pills. The tablets looked slightly different from what I remembered, but when I raised it with the ship's doctor, he waved it off as generic variations. Chloe began carrying my purse everywhere, insisting she was helping since I seemed forgetful. She was always there with sympathy, cookies or tea, watching closely, as though monitoring her own handiwork. I tried to dismiss my suspicions as paranoia, yet fragments of their late-night conversation haunted me. The tension in Michael's voice, the insistence in hers. Then came formal night in the grand dining hall, a glittering scene of chandeliers and live music. Chloe shimmered in a gold dress, laughing as she pulled Michael to the dance floor. I watched them with mixed emotions. Part of me was relieved, they seemed happy. Another part was uneasy. That was when a young waitress slipped a leather-bound menu in front of me and whispered, "Here's the special dessert menu, ma'am." Inside was a folded napkin with shaky blue handwriting. "I saw her put something in your drink. Switch glasses. Get help." My blood turned cold. I sat frozen, staring at the napkin tucked inside the menu, my hands trembling as though they no longer belonged to me. The waitress's eyes flipped toward the dance floor, then back to me with a look of urgency before she turned and walked away. I forced my face into a neutral smile, my heart hammering against my ribs as I looked at the 2 wine glasses on the table. They appeared identical, deep burgundy liquid glowing under the chandeliers. Mine was half empty, hers nearly untouched. Without giving myself time to reconsider, I slid the glasses across the linen tablecloth, switching their places. When they returned from dancing, flushed and smiling, Chloe lifted the glass that was meant for me. "To family," she said brightly, raising it in a toast. Michael echoed the words, and I raised my glass with a steady hand, even as my pulse roared in my ears. 20 minutes later, I watched her affect herself. At first, it was subtle. She blinked too often, touched her temple, murmured about the room, feeling warm. Michael leaned toward her with concern. "Are you okay?" She brushed him off, saying the wine was stronger than expected, but the slurring soon grew unmistakable. She giggled at the chandelier, claiming the crystals were dancing diamonds. Michael's face tightened with worry as he reached for her arm. "Chloe, you've hardly had anything to drink." She tried to stand and nearly collapsed back into her chair, her pupils wide and unfocused. "The ocean has secrets," she babbled, her voice growing louder as diners began to stare. "So many secrets in the dark, and I have secrets too. Big secrets. Rose should know." My blood chilled. Even affected, she was reckless. Michael flushed with embarrassment and helped her from the table, guiding her toward the elevators as she rambled about floating castles and golden fish. The moment they were gone, I sought out the waitress who had saved me. She was clearing plates near the kitchen, but when she saw me approach, she set down her tray and listened. "She's been doing it for days," she said in a low voice. "Every time you left the table, she slipped something into your drink. I've worked in hospitality long enough to recognize the signs." My knees nearly buckled with relief and horror all at once. "Can you prove it?" I whispered. She nodded. "The security office keeps cameras on every corner of the ship. They'll have everything." We walked quickly to the administrative offices, where the ship's security chief listened gravely to my account. Within minutes, he had pulled up footage from the dining room. On one monitor, I watched Chloe at the bar, casually ordering wine. When the bartender turned away, she opened a tiny vial from her purse, poured white powder into one glass, stirred it quickly, and carried both back to the table with a smile. My stomach turned as I watched myself accept the glass without suspicion. "That one was meant for you," the waitress confirmed. The chief's expression hardened. "This is attempted poisoning, possibly attempted hurt. We'll search their cabin tonight." I stood in the hallway when they knocked on Michael's door. He opened it in pajama pants and a t-shirt, confusion written across his face. "Mom, what's happening?" My words failed me, but the officers pushed past him to begin their search. Chloe lay on the bed in a silk nightgown, still disoriented, mumbling incoherent phrases. Michael looked from me to the officers in panic. "This has to be a mistake. She would never hurt anyone." But within minutes, they pulled evidence from her luggage. Glass vials of clear liquid with labels peeled away and a prescription. Bottle identical to mine but filled with different pills. "She's been switching your medication," the security chief explained. "We'll confirm in a lab, but this is deliberate." Michael's face crumpled as he stared at the evidence. "Chloe, what is this? What did you do?" She tried to answer, her voice slurred. "It's not what it looks like." But her tablet gave the final blow. Dozens of videos filled the screen, secret recordings of me wandering my kitchen, confused, forgetting words mid-sentence, stumbling during shopping trips. She'd been building a case, fabricating evidence of dementia. My stomach twisted as the truth solidified. She was never my future daughter. She was a predator, systematically affecting me to seize control of everything Richard and I had built. I turned to Michael. my heart heavy with dread. Did you know? Tears streamed down his face as he shook his head desperately. Mom, I swear I didn't. I thought you were just getting older. I thought she was helping you. I never knew. I wanted to believe him, but the trust between us was fractured, fragile as glass. Still, when the authorities boarded in Miami the next morning and took Chloe away, Michael stayed by my side, devastated and bewildered. That was only the beginning of the truth I was about to uncover. When the Miami police boarded the ship, everything moved with chilling efficiency. Chloe, now alert enough to realize the gravity of her situation, was escorted off the vessel. Her once perfect smile had hardened into something cold, a mask finally stripped of charm. A detective named Maria Santos, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, interviewed me in a conference room while evidence technicians catalogued every vial, pill bottle, and recording. We ran her prints, Detective Santos said, spreading photographs across the table. Her real name is Chloe Richardson. She has a record: fraud, identity theft, elder mistreatment. She's made a career out of targeting wealthy older people. I stared at the mugshots, the surveillance stills. Chloe's face appeared over and over, slightly different hairstyles and aliases, but always the same striking features. Detective Santos continued, her tone measured but heavy with implication. She was married to a contractor in Tampa, Robert Hughes. He died 8 months ago of an apparent heart attack. His children suspected foul play, said he'd been confused and declining mentally in the months before his death. She inherited nearly $500,000 and his home. Michael, sitting beside me, pale and trembling, whispered, she told me she'd never been married before. The detective's words kept coming, each fact striking harder than the last. Chloe had been the caregiver for her wealthy uncle, who was committed to a psychiatric facility after sudden dementia symptoms. Once removed from her care and placed in a new facility, his mind improved dramatically. Doctors now believed his original diagnosis had been manipulated. Chloe had full financial control of his estate. My stomach turned as the pieces clicked together. She'd been perfecting her method: substances to simulate decline, careful documentation of symptoms, then legal control of assets. Once her victims seemed incompetent, I asked the question that had been gnawing at me since the first suspicion: was my son involved? Detective Santos's gaze softened. From everything we see, no. She manipulated him the same way she manipulated you. Based on her history, her plan was likely to have you declared incompetent, take your house, then move on to Michael. An accident, an illness, something that left her his grieving widow and sole heir. I looked at Michael, who was clutching his head in his hands, disbelief etched into every line of his face. If she could do this to you, Mom, he whispered, what was she planning for me? The Miami hospital became my temporary home. While doctors ran tests, they confirmed what I already feared. The pills and powders Chloe had been giving me were carefully designed to cause confusion, memory loss, and disorientation. You're lucky, Dr. Williams, a specialist, told me. A few more months, and the damage could have been permanent. The thought chilled me to my core. My trust, my vulnerability, had nearly destroyed me. Michael stayed at my side, guilt radiating from him. I should have seen it, he said one afternoon, bringing me tea. The way she always wanted to know about your finances, how she insisted on coming to your doctor's appointments. She even suggested we get you evaluated for dementia. He broke off, his voice cracking. I thought she cared about you. I thought she was protecting us. I wanted to be angry with him, but I saw the devastation in his eyes. Chloe had manipulated him as cruelly as she had me. She had turned his concern for me into a tool. The investigation widened quickly. Detectives reopened the case of Robert Hughes, suspicious now that his heart attack came after months of unexplained confusion. They looked into Edward Richardson, Chloe's uncle, who was improving after years of supposed dementia. The pattern was undeniable. She identified isolated families with wealth, slipped into their lives with charm, affected her victims to create decline, then took everything once they were vulnerable or gone. And now she'd almost succeeded with me. When her trial came months later, the evidence was overwhelming. Security footage, confiscated vials, falsified medication bottles, and the damning recordings on her tablet painted a portrait of a calculating predator. Witnesses testified about her past schemes, and doctors confirmed what had been done to me. Chloe Richardson was sentenced to 25 years, on charges of attempted hurt, fraud, and elder mistreatment. Watching her led away, her eyes still sharp and defiant, I felt no victory, only a deep, exhausted grief for what might have happened if I hadn't switched those glasses. But even with her behind bars, I still faced the hardest part, learning to trust again, especially my own son. After Chloe was sentenced, I tried to return to normal life, but the shadows of what had happened followed me. My home, once a sanctuary, now felt like a battlefield where trust had been shattered. Every room seemed to hold echoes of her footsteps, her laughter, her feigned kindness. Yet, it was also the house Richard and I had built together. The place where Michael had grown up, the life I had fought to protect. I refused to let her win by making me abandon it. Michael moved back in during my recovery, setting up a home office in Richard's old study. At first, it was supposed to be temporary, just until I felt stronger. But the days stretched into weeks, and he simply never left. We began having dinner together every night, simple meals like we used to share when he was a boy. He carried guilt with him, guilt that no words of mine could erase quickly. I should have known, Mom, he repeated often, his eyes heavy with regret. She fooled me, too, I told him gently. We both wanted to believe in her. That doesn't make us weak, it makes us human. Slowly, the distance that had grown between us over the years disappeared. We spent evenings on the porch talking about Richard, about Michael's childhood, about mistakes and second chances. For the first time in decades, I felt like I truly had my son back. He cut his work hours drastically, choosing family over endless boardroom battles. I almost lost you, he said one evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the sky in golden rose. I won't risk that again. Business can survive without me micromanaging, but I can't survive losing you. The medical reports confirmed that Chloe's substances were cumulative, each dose built on the last, clouding my mind until I doubted myself, until I was nearly ready to believe I was succumbing to dementia. Another few months, and I might have been committed, unable to prove what was really happening. That thought haunted me, the fragile line between truth and manipulation. How easily reality could be rewritten by someone patient and ruthless enough to engineer it. Detective Santos visited me once more, months after the trial. You know, she said, switching that glass may have saved not only your life, but others. If she had succeeded with you, your son would have been next, and after him, who knows how many more families she would have destroyed. Her words stayed with me. One small act, a desperate choice made in seconds, had changed the course of everything. Life didn't return to what it had been before, but maybe that wasn't a loss. I had learned something vital. Resilience isn't about avoiding pain, but surviving it, refusing to let it define you. I had also learned that predators often look like saviors, wearing smiles and extending helping hands. Caution is not cynicism. It is wisdom earned by scars. I wasn't bitter. Bitterness gives the poison a second life, and I'd already had enough of that in my system. Instead, I chose gratitude. Gratitude for the waitress whose instincts and courage saved me. Gratitude for the clarity that came from knowing the truth. Gratitude for the second chance to rebuild my relationship with Michael. Chloe wanted to take everything from me, but in the end, she gave me back the one thing I thought was slipping away forever: closeness with my son. Sometimes I sit on the balcony at sunset, looking out at the same view Chloe once admired with hungry eyes, and I think about how she dreamed of living here forever. Instead, she has a permanent home now, but it's not this house. It has bars on the windows, locks on the doors, and steel gray walls that will hold her for the next quarter century, a fitting place for someone who built her life by imprisoning others in confusion and fear. My story is not just about betrayal, it's about survival, about how even in your weakest moments, you can discover strength you didn't know you had. If there's one lesson I carry, it's this: never ignore the red flags you try to paint as welcome mats. Trust is precious, but it should be guarded, because there are people in this world who will use your longing for connection as the sharpest tool against you. Thank you for listening to my story. If it struck you, if it made you think of someone in your own life who wasn't what they seemed, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so more people can hear stories like this. And most of all, stay cautious, stay strong, and never doubt the value of your own instincts.